Now, as we look at Jefferson's use of the authority of nature's God or the Creator in these arguments, what we want to know is that he's talking about something very specific here. When John Locke wrote his second treatise of government, and for a matter of fact, his first treatise of government, but when John Locke wrote these articles, he was specifically responding to a guy named Filmer. And Filmer had written an argument about the divine right of kings. And in essence, the argument of this divine right of kings is the idea that God chose the king, therefore the king is greater, better than you are. And so this creates, an aristocracy, if you will, or a monarchy, and the subjects. And Jefferson is going to, in essence, pull the rug out from underneath this argument here, as Locke did as well. And he's going to say, no, all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. So what he's going to say is, no, Mr. Filmer, you're wrong. All men, according to God, are created equal, and they have rights that are unalienable. So he's going to attack, if you will, the concept of the divine right of kings. Think about it, divine, godly. The divine right, a right is something that comes from God, according to these arguments, the divine right of kings. And Jefferson is going to say, no, there is no divine right of kings. All men are created equal, and that this equality comes through the rights that were given from God. So he's making a very specific theological argument. And you will see in his letter from a Birmingham jail, Dr. Martin Luther King will make an argument, also make a theological argument. And let's not forget, Dr. King was a reverend in the Baptist Church, so it's well within his realm in the 1960s to make a theological argument. But King is going to basically echo Jefferson's argument in the Declaration of Independence when he writes his letters from a Birmingham jail. So you want to look for that connection. Let's go on. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. This is a very complicated sentence which contains a lot of very important ideals. And so we kind of want to unravel these a little bit. So what we're going to take a look at is that to secure these rights, so he's referencing who's going to secure these rights. Government is going to secure these rights. So when we ask the unanswerable or the ageless question, which is what is the proper role of government, Jefferson is going to tell us in these words that the role of the government is to secure our rights, and that these rights have come to us from God, and that everyone has the same rights. Okay? So that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. So if we go all the way back to Plato and Aristotle and Socrates, and all the way through the modern era, one of the fundamental questions that, in essence, everyone's asking, which is, what is the nature of man? And so, if you look at it, there are some people that will say the nature of man is good. That generally we get it wrong once in a while, but we're pretty good guys. But if you take a look at Western theology, specifically Christianity, or really any of the Abrahamic faiths, which includes Judaism, Christianity, and Islamic faiths, they're going to argue, as is Jefferson here, that the nature of man is bad or fallible. That we are, in essence, if you take a look at the Christian theological argument, is none are good, no, not even one. This is a reference from Romans 3:10. And so the answer to that question for many philosophers and people in government is that we need a government that has the ability to curtail the bad behavior of mankind. And so he's going to say here, governments are instituted among men. So governments are made of men. Men are fallible. Therefore, if men are fallible, guess what? Government is equally fallible. So he's talking about the fallibility of government. In other words, let's go all the way back to the beginning. It's a statement of ideals. And yet we know whenever, according to this line of philosophy or theology, whenever mankind is involved, you're not going to get perfection. Why? Because man is not a perfect creature. Man is a fallible or a fallen creature. This is the premise of Christianity, which is going to be very influential on our nation at the founding period. And so that to secure these rights, government exists to protect our rights. Governments are instituted among men. Men aren't perfect, neither is government. Deriving there, and this is probably the most critical concept in the entire document, deriving there what kind of power? Just powers from the consent of the governed. Okay, so now Jefferson is going to reference Locke, and he's going to talk about where does the authority of government reside. It resides with the consent of the governed, i.e. you and me. So when we look at government, and a contemporary argument will be something to the effect of, government's messed up because the Republicans are messed up, or government is messed up because the Democrats are messed up. And the argument is, you know what? Government looks just like me and you. It is the consent of the governed, and when the governed fail to give their consent, which is done through voting, it's going to get corrupted, okay? And so that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their, here it is, just powers from the consent of the governed. So this is going to be a reference to the social contract. Okay, so the social contract is a mental construct. It's never been written down. You didn't sign a contract when you were born. But there's an agreement within society that we will agree to certain rules in our society. And so the agreement that Jefferson is referencing here is we've agreed, the consent of the governed, we've agreed to give our government the right to act with just power, or to act justly. Okay, so what's the opposite of just power? That will be unjust power. And so when we take a look at the next sentence, we're going to see him examine this concept a little bit further.